Good morning from the Beehive state. I am Blaine. I'm keeping bees in the high desert of southern Utah. I'd like to talk a little bit about the siting I have here. East is that way, this is west. And I have 3 hives here. You can see that they're fairly close together, maybe 20 inches apart. That is not ideal. There's a possibility of drifting from one colony to another. But I haven't noticed that that's been a problem. Typically, the hives on the end of the row will get more bees drifting over, but the population of these colonies is pretty uniform, stays that way throughout the year. To mitigate drifting, I've painted symbols on each of the boxes, so the idea is that the bees will cue in on those symbols and find the right home. These 3 hives are in shade all day long. I have some large pine trees, a row of large pine trees here. That provides me an excellent source of smoker fuel. It also provides shade. And there's a lot of opinion that the hives do better if they have plenty of sunshine. My 5 hives over here on the north side of the property are in full daylight all day long, full sunshine. And I don't see any difference in bee health or productivity between the ones that are in the shade here and the ones that are in full sunlight. One advantage of being in the shade is it makes inspecting the hive and harvesting much more pleasant in July and August because I'm in the shade here. They're out of the way here. I've got a rock wall right here about 10 feet in front of me, and the lawn, the backyard, is about 3 feet higher than where I'm sitting. And the grandkids get to come and play in the lawn here, and because of the trees and the barrier that it provides, the bees never bother the grandkids. Another advantage is it's at home. I'm in a suburban neighborhood here, so I just need to come out in my own backyard and work the bees. Again, it's a suburban neighborhood, so the floral sources are whatever people have in their gardens, in their yards. Right now, we're towards the end of the vegetable garden bloom, but we have plenty of clover along some of the streets, and the Russian sage is about to start blooming. It's just starting to bloom in my front yard. That's a very popular ornamental bush here in the area, and the bees seem to really enjoy that. For water, on the back side of my house, I have the typical outlet, and I have a heated water bucket there, a bucket that's normally used for watering livestock. So I have a bucket there. I keep it constantly refreshed with fresh water all year long, even in the winter. Have corks floating on top to keep the bees from drowning. And by providing water all year long, the bees are never accustomed to taking water from the neighbor's hot tub or dog dish, something like that. They're always after the water that I'm providing. We have the biggest threat, other than the beekeeper putting in unapproved products in the hive to manage the parasites. The biggest threat would be neighbors treating their yards with pesticides. And a pesticide applicator is around the house yesterday going door to door trying to sell their services. So that would be the biggest threat, would be neighbors applying pesticides. But I make it a habit of giving every one of my neighbors a pint of honey every August, and they let me know if they're going to spray. So I don't see pesticides as a real threat. I believe that colonies should be inspected about every 2 weeks. I begin my inspections in March, as soon as the temperatures are warm enough to open the hive safely. Get 60 degrees, a sunny day, light winds, I will begin my hive inspections and start doing mite counts in March. I do a mite count every month and a basic hive inspection every 2 weeks, looking for presence of a queen, looking for diseases, evidence of disease, and parasites, and make sure that they have space. I like to add another super when they get to about 70% full. And by doing that, by giving the bees that attention, I'm able to catch problems early, especially swarming problems in the spring. I can add space early, and I never ever see signs of swarming in my hives because I'm staying on top of it. Another part in the swarming is I like to keep young queens. All of my queens here are this year's queens. I requeen every year. I raise a couple of my own, but mostly I buy from Northern California or somewhere else in the north where there's not an Africanization problem. And that is a problem we have here in southern Utah. I don't know, I would guess probably 10, 20% of honeybee colonies in southern Utah are extremely defensive, very hard to work with. And that makes it kind of risky to raise queens in this area because you can't control how the mating happens. But I like to have 2 or 3 of my colonies every spring produce 2 or 3 frames of drone brood each for the purposes of flooding my neighborhood with drones of known gentle genetics. I do that for my own protection. I want gentle bees when I raise queens, and it helps mitigate Africanization in the area. I'll start the inspection typically with looking at the entrance. I want to see some good activity. I like to see at least 30 to 60 bees a minute coming and going. I'm watching for bees with pollen on their legs. And I'll look inside, see if I see drones that are struggling with the invaders. And I'll look for struggling on the outside. The bee just went in with, there's another one, pollen on her legs. So pollen's coming in, and I see some of them with the abdomen a little bit extended. They're bringing in nectar. I'll look on the ground. I'm looking for bees that are crawling around in the pine straw there, weakened from diseases. And I see a drone there in the pine straw. Come here, brother. Pinched him a little bit. So I look for bees that are struggling there. That would indicate that there's possibly a disease problem going on inside. Looking for mummies from chalk brood, excess of dead bees. I'll see quite a bit of dead bees during the winter and the snow here, but that's normal. Nobody gets out of here alive. So death is part of agriculture. But I'm looking for signs that there's a problem there in the dirt. I'm looking for signs of robbing. Bees that are flying around acting real suspicious, trying to get into the gaps, cracks between the hive parts. Look for yellow jackets, hornets, and wasps. I rarely see those. I keep strong colonies, and that tends to keep the robbing and other thieves at bay. What I expect to see, we're end of June, early July, I expect to see quite a bit of honey stores. Most of them will be open, not quite ready to be capped over. So I'll see, I expect to see at least an equivalent of a deep and a half of carbohydrate stores, nectar and honey. The honey is where they're getting their energy. It has a trace of other nutrients, vitamins and minerals, but mostly it's just for energy. So I expect to see the equivalent of quite a bit, super and a half full of that. And I expect to see several frames of brood open and capped and eggs. Right now, I'll expect to see all the frames with bees on them. So I've got 4 boxes. I expect to see 40 frames with bees. So that's what I expect to see this time of year. I have 8 hives. Again, 3 are here, 5 are on the other side on the north side of the property. All of them, the entrances are oriented so they're not providing problems for the neighbors or for my grandkids. And I was going somewhere with that. It's hard getting old. Well, I guess we'll get into the hive and maybe I'll remember what I was going to say. I did a mite count in 2 weeks ago. Most of the hives had 0. A couple of them had 1. This hive had 1 mite 2 weeks ago. In April, I had treated with Apple Life VAR. That requires a couple of repetitions. And that does a really good job for me in the spring. You can't use that when you have honey supers on the hive. It taints the honey. But the early spring, it works well. Another product I typically use in the spring. I didn't use it this year. The formic acid products, Might Away Quick Strips and Formic Pro. I didn't use it this year. I used the Apple Life VAR. I like to rotate treatments so I don't raise bees that are resistant to treatments. This year, I'm going to try something new. I will try the new Viroxan if I need to treat during the summer, and I probably will. I'll do another mite count in 2 weeks. And if I get above my threshold, which is 2%, I will try Viroxan this year. It's starting to get warm enough that some of the products become unsafe or difficult to use. So I'll try Viroxan this year. So we'll get into the hive. We get a lot of wind around here, not so much under the trees, but I put a brick on them, keep the winds from taking my lids to the next county. A little puff in the entrance, and a little puff in the hole in the inner cover. I like to set my lids on the ground near the hive, and as I disassemble the hive, I can lay things on the lid to keep everything clean. Check the inner cover. I'm looking for the queen. Several years ago, I was trying some Russians, and I didn't check the inner cover. And when I was putting the hive back together, I saw a green dot, flat as a pancake, on my inner cover. Smashed my brand new Russian queen. On this side, I see nectar. This is a new frame. I rotate out my queens, my frames every year. So you can see what looks like water in the cells there. Nice, fresh, new white wax. That's nectar, not quite ready to be kept over. I will set this, make sure I don't have a queen on here. I doubt she'd be out here. I like to start on an outside frame that reduces the chance of injuring the queen. I just set that frame that I'm not using on my hive stand. So I like to rotate out my frames when they start to get dark, about every 4 or 5 years. There's just some nectar here, new wax, and put new frames in. That way I get rid of the frames that have a buildup of pathogens and pesticides, and it makes the comb a really unhealthy place to raise brood. I hold the frame over the hive in case the bees drop off, especially my queen. They're going to fall into the hive and not on my feet and crawl up my legs. Especially the queen. I don't want to drop her on the ground. That frame was just nectar. I see brood on this one. This is not one of my drone producing colonies, so I don't have many drones in here. Find some sunshine here. And this frame has the pupa stage, the capped brood. Fairly nice pattern there. Up in the corner by my finger here, you see some capped honey. That's probably left over from last year. And down inside, right there in the middle, you see a little bit of bee bread. That's pollen. They add a little bit of nectar and honey to it, so it ferments and makes it more digestible. This frame is starting to get a little old. If it's full of honey this year, I will harvest the honey and rotate this frame out. On the bottom, you see a couple of queen cells. Get it in the center of the picture here. Another one over here, queen cups. There's nothing in those. It's common to see those. A queen cell across the bottom of the frame like that would typically be a swarm cell, telling you that if that had larvae in it, that tells you they're making preparations to take the queen away and half my bees and move into somebody's soffit. And I really dislike when people allow their bees to swarm. It's not fair to the neighbors. And this frame is new this year. You can see it's a much lighter color. Looking for the queen. I don't see her on this frame. These are all workers and worker brood. And right there you see some nice larvae. We want that to be pearly white. And we want it to look wet. It's if it's wet, it's indicating that the brood is being well nourished, that there's plenty of protein coming in, pollen, to feed the brood. Most of these workers will be nurse bees. They're in this area to take care of the brood, keep the climate right around the brood so that the brood develop healthily. And they're always there on the scene to feed the larvae. The Larvae will get about 5,000 visits a day each. And about 2,000 of those are being fed. So the nurse bees here are pretty busy. And no queen on this frame. You see this one's darker, this is an older comb. Honey up in the corner, you'll have an arc of honey and bee bread towards the top. That's bee bread there. Honey up in the corner. They like to store the bee bread close to where the nurse bees are so that the bees get plenty of that protein. Produce lots of royal jelly, mandibular jelly, feed the brood. More bee bread there. And I'm looking for eggs. I'm not seeing it with my 76-year-old eyes, but I have in this corner here, I have some very young larvae, just a day or two old. And they're floating in plenty of royal jelly. Along the top here, you see right there in the center, you see some bullet-shaped cell cappings. That's drone brood. Well, this is not one of my drone rearing colonies, but it's good to see a little bit of drone brood. The drone is a larger animal, so it's going to require a larger cell than the workers do. Slow, steady, gentle movements. I like to use leverage from the Hive tool instead of force to take things apart. Slow, steady, gentle movements, and that goes a long way to avoid agitating the bees. And these are nice bees. Over my lifetime, I've mostly kept Italians, but in the last few years, I've gravitated towards the Cornellans. They seem to be a little more gentle. They have slightly different behaviors, especially in the spring. The Cornellans build up more quickly, so you have to stay on top of it for swarm movement. You see I'm holding the frame by the top, the ears on the top bar, and to look at the other side, I just twist it, rotate it around, and I can see the other side. Got a nice bird pattern here. That's a good queen. This one I raised this year myself. She has some nice daughters. A little more spotty here. Spottiness could be an indication that you might have a health problem, possibly some hygienic behavior. And as I'm looking at the brood, I'm looking for evidence that there might be a problem. I want the cappings to be dry, slightly domed, convex. I don't want to see perforated cappings. Bald brood, that's where they're starting to remove the capping. You see the face of the bee sticking, exposed. I don't want to see that. That's a sign that there's a problem going on in there. And the hygienic behavior has identified that, and they want to open that up and figure out what's going on. For the larvae, we want that to be pearly white. If the larvae are discolored, that's an indication of European foul brood or possibly some viruses from the mites. And if the cappings are sunken or look a little bit wet or oily, greasy, or they're perforated where they're being chewed open, that's an indication of American foul brood. So we have the two bacterial diseases, European and American foul brood. They're reportable in Utah, and I happen to be the county bee inspector, so I'd report to myself. And I would take Q-tip samples and send them into the state inspectors. We have a lab here where they can test the samples for the bacterial diseases, and they send back a nice report saying what we have. And a beekeeper could take that report back to their veterinarian and plead for help. With the veterinary feed directive of 2017, got some bee bread up there in the corner, honey. This frame, the brood's kind of scattered. I don't like that, but I have some frames where it's got a good pattern, so I'm not too concerned about it on this frame. Put it back gentle. Use leverage to pull things apart. I see people want to pry against the 3/8 inch thick wood on the ends of the boxes. I hate to see that because I've seen people do that and break off that thin piece of wood. So I like to pry against the hive body or between the frames themselves. And it looks like this frame is all honey here. Yeah, that's lots of bee bread there. Yeah, this is pretty heavy, but all breed. That's lots of bee bread there. They get plenty of protein in this hive to take care of the next generation of bees. No queen yet. We'll go down another layer and see what we see. You know, use leverage, not force, to push things over. Slow, steady. Give the bees a chance to get out of the way. I like to have the frames tight together, the end bars tight together. That way they're not filling up the gaps with propolis and making management more difficult. If you have to force the frames back in, you probably have too much propolis in the hive. You need to tighten them up a little bit. A little bit of pressure in the corner, pry it apart, pick off the lid. I set them on the inner cover there at an angle that minimizes the crushing of bees. Every life is precious, so we don't want to kill unnecessarily. Again, I'll start on the outside. This looks like an older frame here, but the color of the wax is good. A little brood around the outer edge, and they're backfilling it with nectar. So that brood's coming out there. They're filling it up with nectar. Don't see a queen. Check that bottom bar. Nope, no queen. Set that on the hive stand gently. Some more new frames here. They're just starting to put wax on that. It's got a good nectar flow going on. There's lots of nectar in this hive. No queen yet. Little speck of sunshine here. We have a patch of catbird there, and there's lots of pearly white larvae in there, well nourished. And can't quite see on the screen there, but I saw some eggs in there. Yeah. I can't tell on the screen whether I've got eggs, but I can see them with the naked eye if I get a patch of sunshine here. You have the sun coming over your shoulder, shining right straight down into the cell. Helps to see the little details like eggs. And down here across the bottom, you're going to have some more drone brood. Here's a drone that's working his way out. Looks like he's resting a little bit, but I see his antennae moving. So new wax is going to look really light colored, almost pure white. And when you see that, that means that your comb building bees are getting plenty of carbohydrates to produce lots of wax. Nice brood pattern here. Honey up in the corners. Got some pollen right there. Bee bread. And again, some drone brood. Some of my frames I've cut the ends off here so that that's not the case in this one, but some of them I have a little bit of the plastic foundation cut off to give them a chance to build drone brood, but that's a drone brood that they've built on the plastic. We used to hate to have drones in the hive, but we've learned that they're good to have around. They help maintain, I don't think they do it deliberately, but they help maintain the climate in the hive, the temperature and the humidity. And I think they help the colony just generally stay healthier. You're going to have some nice pearly white brood here, larvae. You know, looks like they're well nourished, plenty of moisture on them. There's some ways that we can control the mites. One, of course, is using chemicals. Like I said, I used Apolife VAR this year. That's a thymol product. We also have Apigard, a thymol product. They will taint the honey. You don't want to use them when supers are on the hive. But they work pretty good. Another way of controlling the mites is drone culling. And this is natural comb. And all the cells are drone cells. So if the queen lays eggs in here, and I don't see any, this would result in drone brood. And as soon as that brood is capped over, I can take this out and put it in the freezer, kill the drones and any mites that are in there. And there's some research that shows that that's pretty effective at helping keep the mite levels down. This is all new white wax, and brand new frame this year, some brand new, newly capped over honey. I haven't seen the queen yet. I think we've moved away from her. Now here's some brood here. The queen moves around the comb quite a bit differently. She just has a little different way of moving. And where these workers have very distinct bands on their abdomen, you see some are darker than others. The queen usually doesn't have any distinct banding. And this particular queen is the caramel color that you see on most of these workers, but she doesn't have the banding. She's longer, long, slender abdomen. Where the drone is, I got a drone here, see if I can catch him before he gets lost. Where'd he go? Okay, I have a drone right here. He's got a more blunt abdomen. He's larger than workers, and he's blunt, not long and tapered like the queen is. Yeah. Wish I didn't have the shade. Be able to see these things better. So the population is good. We've got some of the frames are not quite as covered as others. The new frames are not quite as populated with bees, but the older ones with fully drawn comb are covered with bees. So I'm not quite 40 frames of bees like I thought, 10 frames. This one looks like maybe 7 frames of bees. The one I took off, maybe 7 frames of bees. But I've got plenty of space here I saw lots of empty cells where the queen can work, and plenty of space on the frames where, especially the newer frames where the queens can store their pollen. So we're not quite honey bound yet. I harvest in August, and I think they will be fine until August. Won't need a super, but check them every 2 weeks and make sure that they're healthy. As I'm looking at the adult bees, I'm looking for health problems there. In addition to looking at the brood, I want the bees to. Well, I'm looking for a K-wing, where the wings are spread out abnormally. The deformed wings, missing wings. I'm looking for hairless bees that look like they've been dipped in vegetable oil. Those are signs of viruses. In the brood, you could, in addition to European American foul brood, you might see chalk brood, where a fungus has attacked the bee, and it looks like gray or white, brown chalk. That's, of course, fatal to the bee. I've never seen that in my hives, but I've seen it in other people's hives. Looking for other diseases, which are viruses. Sac brood is one. Again, I've never seen that in my bees. Generally, the brood pattern has been good. There's a couple of frames are kind of spotty. They have plenty of pollen. We see the bee bread. We see the pollen in the corbicula, the hind legs of the bees, and the larvae look like they're well nourished, well fed, good nutrition. If I were to find a brood problem, a chalk brood, or the bacterial diseases, some things you could do would be maybe change the genetics, put a new queen in here, get different genetics, might solve the problem. Sometimes stress can be a factor. So if they're not getting adequate nutrition, that puts them in stress. But I see that they're bringing in plenty of pollen, plenty of nectar, so they're not under stress from nutrition. But they could be stressed by pesticides, and I'm not seeing evidence of that. If I were to find the European foul brood in one of my hives or in another beekeeper's hives, it would be appropriate to, again, requeen if desired, but it'd be appropriate to use an antibiotic to deal with that. And the antibiotic of preference is tetracycline, oxytetracycline, terramycin. That requires a veterinary directive, a prescription. And I would bring the veterinarian to the hive and let him inspect to see what he sees, show him the lab report, and he could sell me the terramycin. For American foul brood, if I saw that, that's where you see the sunken cappings, oily looking cappings, perforated cappings. If I saw that, the appropriate treatment there is to dig a pit, burn the hive, the bees, and bury it. And we bury it because this nectar and the honey is not going to burn. So we have to bury it and hope that it's decomposed, the spores are decomposed before anybody digs up the bodies. Here in the Utah desert, we don't have a problem with small hive beetle. That's a problem that you see in moister climates, warmer climates. But our soil is too dry for the small hive beetle to pupate. However, we have commercial beekeepers that are bringing their bees back from the almonds every year, and the almond orchards are a giant petri dish for everything. And so they do bring back the small hive beetle, and I'll see that in commercial beekeepers' apiaries. But they don't pupate, and so they don't stay around. I didn't see the queen, but I know she's here. I saw eggs, and we have plenty of larvae in the pupa brood. Saw a couple of queen cups. They're not being used. The queen cells you can see them across the bottom of the comb or across the face of the comb. If they're across the face of the comb, that's an indication that they have an emergency going on, or they think the old lady's failing and they want to replace her. So you typically see those cells on the face of the comb. Across the bottom, there's typically swarm cells. But if I see queen cells that have larvae in them, I want to do some inspection, see what's going on. And if they need more space, maybe I can take advantage of that swarm instinct and do a split and increase my operation a little bit. And I have as many colonies as my wife wants me to have, so if I did a split, I would sell or give away this split. But you can put the queen cells, leave the queen cells in the original site, and move the queen and bees and some brood to another hive on a different site. And you've done a split, and the site with the hive with the queen cells will raise those queens. One of them will go out and mate, and you'll have a queen-right colony again. Swarming is pretty risky. The nature is betting on the swarm successfully building a nest and accumulating the resources to get through winter, and sometimes that happens. They don't make it through the winter. And the parent, the mother colony, is betting on having a successfully mated queen that's not nabbed by a robin or a bat or a windshield. So swarming is pretty risky, and we don't want to allow it to happen. We can take advantage of it in management, but we don't want to allow our bees to swarm. We're towards the end of the swarming period, late June, early July, but it still happens. I still occasionally catch a swarm. the later in the summer. Talked a little bit about Varroa. I do a mite count every month. Talked about drone culling as one way we want to use integrated pest management, use all the tools available to us to manage the problem. And drone culling is one way that's easy to use. It's a mechanical, cultural way of removing the mites. The mites, the natural host is Apis cerana, an Asian honeybee, and they prefer the drone brood. And they seem to prefer the drone brood under Apis mellifera. And so if you have some drone culling, you're going to get a lot of the mites. I worry about selecting for mice that prefer the worker bees, but drone culling is a tool. Another possible way of controlling mites is a brood break. We can confine the queen or do a split, and you have a broodless period where there's no open brood, no place for the foundress mite to reproduce. Splits, I mentioned using the swarm as a split. And swarming itself is a brood break. So that helps control the mites. And then we have the chemicals. I mentioned the Apple Life VAR that I used this year. And we can move up the spectrum there to the synthetic chemicals. We're still using Amitraz, a synthetic pesticide, but it's losing effectiveness. And those contaminate the honey and the wax. So I kind of like to stay away from them. Another way of controlling the mites, integrated pest management, is good genetics. And these carniolans seem to do really well at managing the mice. So they still need help. They still need those inspections, and sometimes they need us to throw in something in the hive to deal with the mites. But good genetics is a good part of it. And I like the fact that these carniolans are just as gentle as a pussycat. Again, I squeeze all my frames tight together and put the hive back together. I'm not ready for that inner cover yet. Sometimes you get a lot of bees on the top. They're in the way of putting the hive back together. You can puff a little bit of smoke and that pushes them down. It makes it safer to put things in place. I didn't see a queen, but I do have a treat here that I'd like to share. This hive you see is one box shorter, and that's because I did a split. One of our 4-H kids needed some bees, so I split this hive. I gave her, the queen, some brood, and I made sure this one had a frame of, I doubt there's a queen there because I gave her away. Can't hurt to check. So I made sure this one had a frame of eggs and day-old larvae. So I'm going to pull that out and check on it. I already know what I'm going to see because I checked them a week ago, but I want you to see them. Didn't see a queen in that other colony, but I have queens here. I haven't counted them, but I think I have about a dozen big fat queen cells here. And more on this side. Unfortunately, this is a plastic foundation. I can't cut those cells out and put them in separate mating nukes. So whichever queen emerges first here is going to go around and kill the others and then go out to mate. And then I'll have a queen right colony again. Right now, it's kind of queen right. I have lots of queens in these cells. And they look nice. Again, this frame, when I gave away that queen, was nothing but eggs and day-old larvae. Just a perfect age for raising a queen. So I'll have a queen right colony here pretty quick. That was about 2 weeks ago, so maybe in 2 days they'll have some queens coming out. So I did see queens. They're just caged up. If you put it on an angle and twist it into place, you're going to crush fewer bees. And put my brick back on there. Reveal the face that my mother gave me. So again, all of these colonies were overwintered, but we did do a split on the one on the end there to raise some queens to replace the one that I gave away. They have, this colony has plenty of food in there, plenty of honey, plenty of nectar, plenty of pollen. Brood's doing well. It's all stages of brood. Didn't see the queen, but I saw eggs, so I know we've got a queen in there. Overall, they're doing really well. I didn't see any sign of disease. I don't see anything on the ground that indicates a problem. For immediate problems, I think they're going to be fine for the next 2 weeks. When I come back, do another inspection and do a mite count, and maybe a treatment. We'll see if they need it. I don't like to treat unless they need it. It's a waste of money, waste of time, and I just don't want to raise mites that are resistant to the treatments. I don't think of anything else. I appreciate you coming to Utah and help me check my bees. I've enjoyed this Master Beekeeper course. I've enjoyed the communication with my fellow students and with our facilitators. I've been keeping bees since 1962, but I can't say I know it all. I learned something just about every time I open the hive. I see something that I just keep learning from the bees. I learn from fellow beekeepers, and I think it's important to keep doing that. We have lots of opinions about how to do things. Every beekeeper's got multiple opinions on any one subject, and we need to be open to listening to those, but we also need to be skeptical. A well-educated mind is skeptical of new information, but also receptive to new information. I try to do both, be skeptical and receptive. So again, thank you for coming to Utah with me, the Beehive State, where our state insect is the honeybee. Thank you.